freedom of speech, if you say freedom of speech in breweries, the flying dog name will come up. And it comes from, I guess the source of this, whether it's George Stranahan and his entrepreneurial, independent spirit, up there in Colorado, our, connection with Hunter S. Thompson, my maternal grandparents leaving Russia after the Troubles and before the Revolution. We are very, very much proponents, believers in, and advocates and make real the concept of personal and individual freedom, economic freedom and opportunity for people. This is who we are. And whenever you see constraints on that, we object to that. And freedom of speech does come up in this industry because both the federal government and the state liquor commissions have to approve beer labels. And there's been this interesting phenomenon. There was something called prohibition, which would have made this not possible. And the 21st Amendment repealed prohibition. And it gave states at that time the right to control alcohol. Well, there was this dynamic that I think came into play that states thought that somehow that meant they were immune from the First Amendment. The First Amendment did apply. They could control the beer and the labels. So there's been an ongoing, interesting relationship between breweries, distilleries, wineries, appointed officials on liquor commissions across the country, from time to time rejecting labels because they didn't like the label, they had a personal agenda, they might have been extremely squeamish for reasons that had nothing to do with constitutional freedoms. And we had a couple of run-ins. Ralph's art is edgy, for sure, but under no definition is it obscene or banned language, and it's not hateful. In fact, similar to Ralph, I am the most anti-bully person that I know. I mean, I object to anything. We would never do stuff that's offensive, but edgy and fun is different from offensive. So the first label that we received from Ralph had the saying, "Good beer, no shit" on it, which related to an essay that Hunter wrote for the release of Road Dogg. And each bottle had a little necker on it with this essay with Hunter, and it was an interesting essay, and it finished with this ancient Celtic axiom, et cetera, good people drink good beer. So Ralph put "Good beer, no shit" on the label, saying, my friend Hunter wrote this essay, and of course good people drink good beer. And the Colorado Liquor Commission rejected it. ACLU took that to the Colorado Supreme Court. It was an administrative decision, and we won. They overruled the Liquor Commission. We didn't do that because, we just were against authority for authority's sakes. It was wrong. It was a crime against freedom of speech that corporations are entitled to. And it was art that was being banned. It's 2000. It was, of course, 1995 back then, but it's still modern times. And then we had a run-in with Michigan, who banned the Raging Bitch label. This was a bigger deal. And that was a situation where Michigan, again, appointed officials that, as regulators, often have the belief that they can enact laws without referendums or people voting on them, take political correctness to an extreme. And political correctness in that regard is just a way to get people to stop talking about stuff and control their thoughts, and you can't talk about this. And they rejected our label for some pretty ludicrous reasons. We sued the commissioners as individuals in federal court, the Western District. The opinion was not in our favor. The opinion was they may or may not have violated your First Amendment rights, but they're immune from prosecution, even if they did, because they're regulators. And that, of course, we didn't believe was true. We appealed at the Federal Court of Appeals level and 6th District, and the decision was unanimously in our favor that yes, you can sue them. They're not immune from prosecution. And the minority opinion went so far as to say, and this was a clear violation of Flying Dogg's First Amendment right to freedom of speech and expression. Go back to Michigan and figure out what the damages were. Michigan settled up quickly, and we moved on. We took the proceeds from that damages and created the First Amendment Society. Because, again, this had nothing to do with publicity or one style of beer in one state that's even a little bit off our radar. It was about what might seem like petty tyranny in a beer label, but it's really about constitutional freedoms, and those are being chipped away at. The cover of the Economist magazine 2 weeks ago, was freedom of speech under attack, and we see that over and over again. So We created the First Amendment Society. It's separate from Flying Dog, but we funded it to start with. And it's so that we can have some residual benefit from this experience in Michigan and continue that conversation.